I see the Zoom room is filling up with participants. Welcome to Coffee Hour. Go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're from in the chat box, and let us know your Penn State class year. We will be getting started in just a minute or two as our Zoom room fills up. Excited to get to our conversation with Congressman Charlie Dent today. I see John Schaefer is here from Las Vegas. John, good to see you as always, or at least see your name from the clad of '88. And Ray Steeb from Pittsburgh, 1980. Good morning, Ray. Todd Nelson is also here in the Zoom room. We'll be getting started in just a minute. You can see our closed captioner has put information if you want to customize your closed caption experience today. The text is in the chat box as well. I see Ron from the class of '74. Ron, good morning. Amanda Winterstein is also here. Good morning, Amanda. Todd Nelson, all the way from Iowa, class of '84. Todd, I just drove through Iowa this past week. Some great weather out there in the Midwest, and always fun to visit Iowa, especially when we go out there and beat them in football. Morning, Amber Redmond. We'll be getting started in just a minute.
Hey, George, can I call you back? I have to go.
Where else would you rather be than a Zoom full of Penn Staters? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and welcome to the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. Each week on Coffee Hour, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State network. Live closed captions are available for this event. You can access them by clicking the closed caption button at the bottom of the Zoom video window, and then click Show Subtitle. You can also customize your caption experience by clicking the stream text link posted in chat. Also, as a reminder, we are recording this session and we will be sharing it on our website following Coffee Hour today. Today, we're going to talk to former Congressman and CNN analyst Charlie Dent. Congressman Dent serves as a senior policy advisor to DLA Piper, a policy analyst as a policy analyst for CNN. He is a visiting fellow at the University of Pennsylvania and a distinguished advisor for the Pew Charitable Trusts. Prior to those positions, Congressman Dent served 7 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives, representing the 15th Congressional District of Pennsylvania, 6 years in the Pennsylvania State Senate, and 8 years in the Pennsylvania General Assembly. Congressman Dent holds a Bachelor of Arts in Foreign Service and International Politics from Penn State and a Master's of Public Administration from Lehigh University. And in 2015, Moravian College conferred an honorary degree of Doctor of Laws upon Congressman Dent. I am excited to welcome Charlie Dent to Coffee Hour. Good morning, Congressman.
Good morning. Let me get me, there we are.
There you go.
Okay, there you go. Video, here we are. Now we're good.
Excellent, excellent. Good morning, good to see you.
Good morning.
First, how are you and your family doing? I know that you had a fight with COVID-19. I hope you're fully recovered and feeling well.
Oh yeah, all's good. Yeah, I had a bout of COVID-19 in March. I got tested on March 31st, actually, after I've had it for a few weeks. Didn't realize I had it, but mercifully, my symptoms were relatively mild. The worst of it for me was just a chronic feeling of fatigue for about 4 or 5 weeks. Had some chills, some sweats, never had a fever, never had a respiratory issue. But had some nasty backaches for 4 or 5 days. But mostly it was fatigue, but by Easter I was in good shape. So touch wood, all's good.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you on Coffee Hour this morning. Let's start right at the beginning. You grew up in the Lehigh Valley. How did you become a Penn Stater?
Well, in my family, things weren't that complicated. You know, Dad went to Lehigh, Mom went to Penn State. So I went to Penn State. I applied to 2 universities, and that was it. And my older brother went to Lehigh, and my sister went to Penn State, followed me up there. Interestingly enough, I was the only one who didn't end up graduating in engineering. But
Right.
Get into that a little later. But essentially, we would go up to Penn State once in a while as a kid, go up to a few football games with my parents, and my mom had a good experience. My dad actually, even though he went to Lehigh, very much enjoyed Penn State and loved the campus. In fact, he encouraged me to go there over Lehigh, just because he felt that there was just greater diversity of course selections, and there are a lot of reasons why he thought it was better for me. So I was delighted to go up there, and never had a regret.
Excellent. What at Penn State, what were you involved in?
You know, it's interesting. You know, I was doing my major in foreign service and international politics. I was a member of the Phi Psi fraternity, Phi Kappa Psi. Back then we had the Phi Psi 500, which is now all gone.
Yeah.
the beer drinking race from our house down to about 5 or 6 bars and through town. And yeah, it's all gone now. All I could say, it was glorious back in the day.
Right.
That kind of activity is frowned upon. But so I spent a lot of time doing, you know, some of my fraternity activities. I never got involved really with student government per se. But I just had a lot of great interactions, mostly just between the fraternity and my academic work. That's how I spent much of my time and participated in, in other university sponsored events. It's always a great time.
Yeah. We're going to dive into your career in public service in just a couple minutes, but I want to start with the why behind your passion to serve. Why did you choose a life of public service? What was the driver of that?
You know, I always had an interest, Paul. I always had an interest in public policy, and and that's why I studied foreign service and international politics. And by the way, one thing I learned at Penn State is that, you know, your parents love you and they want to give you good advice, but sometimes they give you bad advice. And, you know, my dad always told me that in order to make anything of yourself in this world, you need to get a degree in science, math, or engineering. And that was kind of the deal. I'm pleased to tell you, my brother and sister both listened to him, and they both became chemical engineers. Now,
Right.
I started off in industrial engineering, and after my first back then we were on trimesters, and after my first term, my first trimester, I called my dad and I said, "Hey, Dad, you know, I think I'm going to transfer out of engineering into science." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, what are you thinking about?" And I said, "Well, political science." He said, "Well, that's not what the hell I was talking about." And so he long ago forgave me for that. But the point is, I was interested in it, and you have to do things that you're interested in. And so I always liked the scrum of politics and public policy. And that's kind of how I got interested and involved. And I was really happy I studied that at Penn State. You know, I was a good student in my major. In my major, right. I did extremely well in every course. I mean, I never got less than a B in anything. It was those subjects where I didn't have a deep interest, where I underperformed. So
on this kind of program, we're not going to fact check. So we're not going to go into your registrars, into your transcript and verify any of that, Charlie.
Well, I was all over the gamut in terms of GPA. You know,
yeah.
Dean's team. I mean, I've been there. So, but it was all good. Yeah.
You know, it sounds like we grew up in similar households. I grew up in a household with the Penn State engineer who thought science and engineering was the path, and I chose liberal arts education as well, and it seems to have worked out for both of us. But I want to digress for a second, because I want to tell, and this is going to actually connect back. You know, you talked about the advice that your father gave you. My father's never given me any bad advice, and I'm saying that because I know he's on the webinar today. But if I can digress for a moment and tell my Charlie Dent story. So you and I met back in 2016, 2017 for the first time. And in that first meeting, I introduced myself, and without missing a beat, you said, when I was in the state legislature, I worked with the Joe Clifford from Mothers Against Drunk Driving in Pennsylvania on .08 legislation. Is he any relation to you? and I said, yeah, he's my father. I was blown away that you connected, first of all, that you remembered his name,
Yeah.
and that you connected our last names to each other. It just shows how important people are to you, and that people matter, and that all issues and were really personal to you as a congressman. So, and I know he's on here today, and he's really proud of the work that you both did together.
Well, glad to hear Joe's on the call, and no, I was really pleased to be part of that effort back when I was in the state Senate. It was very important to implement that law.
This is the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford, and I'm joined by Congressman and CNN analyst Charlie Dent. All right, Charlie. So nowadays, Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative, those terms carry a lot of baggage. You've been regarded by all as one of the most bipartisan centrists during your time in Congress. It seems as if you were driven by kind of the pragmatic elements of legislation versus steadfast adherence to ideology. How would you describe yourself, politically speaking?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, a lot of people get involved in politics because they may be activists, or they might have some pet issue that just drives them to public service. I never fit that profile. You know, I was kind of a guy from the Lehigh Valley. I spent, 4 years at Penn State, obviously. And I couldn't see myself being in Congress other than representing the community where I lived and where I grew up. You know, there are a lot of people who they move from, place to place, or maybe some of these communities don't have as much of a sense of identity. And, I never thought, you could, move into a place and then pretend you're part of it, run for Congress and represent them. I mean, that's not in my DNA. I couldn't have run for, Congress in central New Jersey, for example. It would have been something I just wouldn't have had the interest. So I was just kind of motivated to serve the community in which I grew up. And, I was kind of more focused on, I'll say, local or regional needs. And using Washington to help advance those. And there are a lot of people who come to Washington who simply go down there because they're part of some, again, they just want to be in the national scrum.
Right.
And that's not how I certainly started out. I mean, look, I got into the national scrum. You can't avoid it. But I was more focused in my first few terms, just trying to make sure we were able to pass a good highway bill, and I could deliver funding for key infrastructure projects. I was on the Homeland Security Committee dealing with a lot of those, important and weighty issues as well. And then eventually I went over to the Appropriations Committee, and we dealt with all kinds of funding. So, but I was always kind of more locally driven. I kind of came up a more traditional route: state representative, state senator, and then U.S. House. But again, that's probably not as typical today as it maybe was. It's still going to be a path for many people, but not everyone. So I was not focused by these ideological issues of the day. In fact, I was always kind of a little bit leery of these ideologues, frankly, on either side, who had a real agenda, and, were pretty damn, there were a lot of people down there who I always felt, were, always, they were always very sure of themselves and never in doubt, a lot of people like that. And they had that kind of attitude to the job, and they didn't have a real practical sense. I mean, they literally were down there to push an ideological agenda. And I said, well, okay, now we have to get the government funded next week. So this is what we have to do to accomplish that. And then someone would say, well, I can't vote for any of that. And I said, well, that's the job. You have to fund the government. You can't default on your obligations. You actually have to, if you're particularly in the majority party, you actually have to vote affirmatively, to pass bills. I mean, these things don't pass themselves. And so I kind of came out of it from a more practical point of view, and which frankly is not as normal, not as much the norm today as it maybe used to be years ago.
Right. So let's stay in the state legislature for a second, and talk about your 14 years representing the 132nd district, and then your time in the state Senate. When you look back at your state service, what accomplishments are you most proud of?
The state service, well, let's go back to the one bill that you mentioned that I worked with your father on, the .08 legislation. We had to implement that law, and then we ended up revising the whole DUI statute, driving under the influence statute. And I was pretty proud of that. I will say, so that was something I was pretty proud of. I had worked hard too on some landlord-tenant issues. I had worked hard too on basically restructuring the Ben Franklin Technology Program that I have up at Penn State, obviously, as well as Lehigh Valley, Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia. And so I worked on a number of economic development issues. I worked on the .08 issue. I worked on certain education issues. I've been involved in any number of different types of initiatives. So I was kind of an eclectic. I didn't just focus or specialize in one area. So I had a lot of bills I worked on. I was very proud of it, and learned how to play the budget process in Harrisburg. That's when everything happened. Back when I was in, basically June was turkey season. That's when everything happened. Nowadays, right. It's not quite the same, obviously, but that was a very important time. And so I learned how to play that, play the budget politics to get what I wanted done. So, and then of course got to work closely with Penn State too. When I was in the General Assembly, I mean, back then I was Frank Forney, Shuckers. We had Rich Eugenio, of course, and now Ben is on the call, and Zach, and the whole team. So got to deal with a lot of really good folks over the years from Penn State.
So when you decided you were going to run for Congress and go down to DC to represent the Lehigh Valley, how did your job change?
From Harrisburg to Washington, my initial reaction to Washington when I first arrived. I remember I was on the House floor and I was watching Bernie Sanders give a speech. He was in the House with me at that time.
Right.
He was giving this stem winder of a speech to no one. I don't think anybody was on the floor except me. I just happened to be passing through and he was giving one of these special orders speeches. And it sounded like a rant. I mean, it was like and I thought, wow, how does a guy like this get elected? I mean, he just, he was really a socialist. I mean, he hasn't changed. I meing, he's the most consistent politician I've ever seen in my life. And he's giving some stem winder speech, saying the same stuff today that he was that he's saying today. And I don't know how a guy like this gets elected. I mean, he's from Vermont, but I mean, my goodness, I couldn't say any of this stuff in my district and hope to get elected. So my reaction was, and then there were some Republicans who were doing the same kind of thing, but I just remember Bernie Sanders' speech. And then I guess my reaction though was, the difference between Washington and Harrisburg was that Harrisburg at that time, 2004, could be painfully pragmatic. I mean, there was no deal that could not be cut. I mean, they would fight, people would fight, and they would, some of the fights would get rather personal. But at the end of the day, they'd come to an agreement. They'd shake on it, and then they'd move on to the next fight. And then I said, so Harrisburg was painfully pragmatic. And I thought, thinking of Bernie Sanders and others, that, that Washington was excruciatingly ideological. And that was the difference. Now, to be fair, over time, Harrisburg now looks a lot more like Washington. Right. And, Washington's only gotten more extreme, although we can get into that later. I mean, it's not so much about ideology anymore. It's, in the era of Trump, but that's another conversation.
Yeah, well, let's maybe go in that direction a little bit, because it seems like you could just take Harrisburg and DC out of it and say that our country has become ideologically divided more so than ever. People, taking really strong positions on where they stand, and the inclination to compromise seems to be less and less. It seems to be seen as a sign of weakness. Is that how you perceive it as well?
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, I would say that I don't know that a lot of these folks in Washington have as deeply held views as we're led to believe.
Right.
I really don't believe that. I believe that politics now is more tribal and situational. That, in other words, my position really depends on where I'm sitting. I can take the complete opposite position if the shoe is on the other foot, or if the circumstances are reversed. I see that happening all the time, where I'll take an example that maybe the folks in the webinar may not be interested in, but say like the filibuster in the Senate.
Right.
I would listen to some of my Republican colleagues in the House rant about the filibuster. Get rid of the filibuster, get rid of it. It's terrible. And And I would always say, caution, caution, caution. You know, there are problems with the filibuster, but if you ever want to get an agreement, if you want the Senate to look just like the House, you know, and get rid of the filibuster. And then, you know, but the nice thing about the Senate was it was the only mechanism that facilitated some level of compromise, because you needed both parties to pass something out of the Senate to get 60 votes. So in that sense, it made sense. So I would listen to Republicans rant about that. Now I'm hearing Democrats ranting about getting rid of the filibuster. Well, Republicans were ranting about it when there was a Republican majority in the Senate, and you know, and they were mad at the Democrats for obstruction. Now, okay, so here we are. Now the Democrats are saying they want to get rid of it too, to prevent Republican obstruction with the filibuster. And so the point is, I mean, I'm anxious. I like to go sit in the Republican conference right now in the House and find out, are we still against repealing this, removing the filibuster? My guess is the answer is hell no. If they're for it, we're now against it. I mean, that's what I mean about the situational nature of politics. And there really is no consistency. I mean, not that there was ever a whole lot of consistency. You know, what it was the great author, you know, consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds, but I think we've taken it to a whole new level.
It's funny how positions change, whether you're in the majority or the minority. And you can apply that across a lot of these process issues, like campaign finance, right? When you're in the minority, you're for campaign finance reform. When you're in the majority, you want free reign.
Yeah. It's well, you know, it's again, when you're in the majority, you have the reins of government. You know, you have to be more responsible. When you're in the minority party, you know, it's a lot easier to be pretty reckless and to, you know, throw bombs. John Boehner once said, when I was in the minority, I'd go out there and, you know, make a bomb, go to the House floor and throw it and go back to my office and start making another one, you know, but it's easy to do when you're a minority, just to blow things up. But when you're a majority, you actually have to advance things. And I would often use the term, and I would get in trouble with some of my colleagues who were in the majority but couldn't vote for things that needed to occur. Right. I once said publicly, I said, you know, any old jackass can kick down a barn door, but it takes a carpenter to hang one. And we could use a hell of a lot more carpenters around here right now. I mean, builders rather than destroyers. And so, I mean, but that's what you deal with.
Absolutely. I know the people of the Lehigh Valley and the people of Pennsylvania were in your heart throughout your service. And I know your decision to leave public service was difficult. Why was May of 2018 the right time for you to step away?
Well, you know, I made a decision fairly early in 2017 that I probably was not going to run again. And by about June of 2017, it was in my head that I was not going to run again. Told my family that. They didn't believe me, of course. And they did not believe me when I said that. And then, I said to them, I think I'll make an announcement sometime after after Labor Day, after Labor Day. And, you know, I wasn't sure. The only thing on the timing. So in September of 2017, I said I was not going to run again. And then as time went on, I started planning for the future, and it got to the point where I had to start making some decisions. And I talked to CNN, I talked to, my law firm, I talked to various people. And I just got to the point where I said, I need to make a decision. I want to make a decision when I'm out of office, at least finalize things, and not while I'm in office. And so I left a few months earlier than I would have ordinarily, but it just seemed, it just felt like the right time. And I had just completed my last official act at that time too. I worked on the military construction VA appropriations bill, and I basically got that through the full committee, which the bill was it was passed into law pretty much as I wrote it. So I got it through the committee without any incident. And that was the main thing. Getting it, anybody, a monkey could have managed it on the House floor at that point. It was pretty easy. And so I got that done. That was my main thing. And I took care of that, about the week before I left.
So you mentioned the work that you're doing with CNN. When you graduated from Penn State, did you ever see yourself doing television?
No, never thought I'd be doing any of that. I just held back. I don't think it was CNN. Was it first? It first went on, I think, in 1980. So I think about that time. So if my memory serves me correctly. You know, I never really thought about being a television person. Hell, like a lot of people at that age, you know, I thought I was relatively shy. Public speaking was not something I felt comfortable doing, like a lot of folks. And I remember at Penn State, they forced us all to take speech communications. Everybody had to take speech communications. And I also took, you know, not only took one theater class, I only did it because it kind of got me off my backside and, you know, made me, do, you know, say things, do things a little bit, be a little uncomfortable.
Right.
You know, in other words, but it forces you to, you know, to get over whatever fears or anxieties you have about speaking in front of others. But I never planned on going on television.
This is the Penn State Alumni Association's Coffee Hour. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Congressman and CNN analyst Charlie Dent. All right, Charlie, I'm going to have 2 minutes to ask this question. You have 2 uninterrupted minutes to answer, and then we'll have general discussion afterwards.
Okay, so unlike last night, you're not going to interrupt me like every 5 seconds. Okay, 200 interrupted minutes. Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I say that in jest, but I want to ask you about last night's debate. Now that you're a Monday morning quarterback on CNN, what is your analysis of what we saw last night?
Oh, look, I mean, any thought of or any semblance of normalcy or civility just went right out the window with that debate. I've been involved in a lot of debates, some of which I felt good about, others I didn't, but I just never saw anything like that. It was as if there were no ground rules. I mean, Chris Wallace, maybe he never stood a chance, but he really didn't try to manage this in any way. I mean, I really did think the president was just, you know, really unruly and out of bounds and uncontrollable. He just kind of was, you know, overheated from the moment the thing began. And I just don't know that anything was, anything positive came out of that last night. I mean, the only people who were proud of that debate performance last night, I guess, were the Proud Boys. I mean, it was really it was a sad spectacle. I mean, I thought in many respects, it looked like the president was self-immolating on the, you know, and I'm not saying that Biden did that well, but
right,
you know, he at least he didn't have a meltdown. I mean, he like tried to get a few points in. So I mean, I'm just trying to score it that way. I just thought the president, you know, even his defenders aren't even trying to defend what happened last night. So. But it was just a bad performance. I mean, you know, just a bad performance, a bad look. I mean, if I'll tell you what, if I were not in the business of, you know, keeping an eye on this stuff, I probably would have turned it off a half an hour in, gone to Netflix
right,
or the U.S. Open, I mean, the French Open tennis tournament or something, anything. Right. You know, but I thought it was really, it was a really sad debate performance, and you kind of wonder whether or not there's any point in having another one. But. I mean,
yeah, and that's part of my next question is certainly we've seen bad debates before, right? But it all centered around someone's poise on stage, right? Their comfort in answering questions, right? It wasn't what we saw last night. I thought last night for some people probably jarred the confidence that Americans have in our government and that Americans have in this whole process. I thought it was I just thought it was jarring to see the two among us who will lead in that kind of environment. How can we get the American people the information that they need to know out of a debate like that if it can't be conducted in a civil way?
Well, to be fair, I don't know that there are a whole lot of people in this country who haven't made up their minds. I think most people already know who they're voting for. Hell, early voting has begun in many states, and so many people have already voted. So I don't know that these debates are going to change anyone's opinions on just about anything. If you don't know how you feel about Donald Trump or Joe Biden by this time, I suspect you're not going to know in 4 or 5 weeks. You're just not going to know. I am candidly, more concerned about what's going to happen after the election. Unless there is a decisive victory one way or the other, I do really worry that we're going to have post-election mayhem, because we do know that we are unlikely to see an election result on election night, an outcome, because so many people are voting by mail. And I think that is a worry. The president, of course, has been very outspoken about the system being rigged, and he seems to be laying the groundwork, as he did last night, that he may not accept the outcome of the election, and which could put us into a whole new realm. I think 1876 was the only time we had another debate where there was a really disputed outcome that took months to resolve. But so I am concerned about that. But unless there is a decisive victory one way or the other, expect some real turbulence post-election. And my own 2-cent analysis is, the best case scenario for the president is that he wins in a close race like he did last time. Worst case for Trump, he gets blown out. I'm not sure how it ends up at this moment. The polling seems to be drifting a little bit more towards Biden than Trump at the moment. It seems that Biden's lead is expanding a bit in some of the swing states. But these polls are just a snapshot in time. These can change very quickly.
So, like last night, do you think last night helped or hurt either of the candidates in any substantive way?
I thought last night actually hurt the president. I just thought he just looked uncivil. He looked rude. He didn't look particularly coherent. I just thought that he just seemed unprepared. And I thought it hurt him. I don't know that it helped Biden that much either, because when he was trying to make some points, but he'd get interrupted quite a bit, and then he would snap back too. He'd say, "Shut up, man," or he'd say, which I understood why he was frustrated. He got
right.
His kids were attacked, and so he would get a little snappy too. But it didn't give him enough time really to make an argument. It seemed just because you kind of get thrown out of your game. Every 10 seconds. So I don't know that it helped him, but I think it definitely hurt the president, because I think most people who watched that realized that he was much more aggressive in that sense. And,
right.
and maybe there are others on the call who disagree with me. I'm happy to hear their viewpoints, but there was not he really didn't make a case as to why he should be elected, from what I could tell.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get any argument if the response is disappointed in last night, regardless of who your candidate is. I don't think you're going to get an argument from anybody. I think disappointed and is the general feeling that most people walked away. With that. And you're right. I think most people, at least most people I know, have made up their mind who they're voting for. I jokingly said to a colleague, if there's an independent, if there's an undecided, I want to meet that person. Someone who's undecided at this point. I have not met these undecideds that they talk about on television.
Well, Paul, the only thing I would add to that is I thought it was actually worse than disappointing. People have used the term dumpster fire. It was a horror show. It was terrifying in many respects. This is the greatest and the most powerful country in the world, the greatest republic, wonderful democratic institutions, and this is what a debate for the highest office in the land looked like. I worry about what people overseas thought after they watched that. This is what we're supposed to strive to be like America. Is this really what we want to be like?
Right.
And I can see why, if you're in China right now or Russia, you're probably gloating and saying, yeah, see, this democracy isn't all that's cracked up to be. Look what a train wreck this is. And then they'll say, look at our wonderful systems, that are anything but that. But that's what their answer will be, that, our systems are much more orderly and better than what these democracies are selling.
Absolutely. Well, look, while there are many things in this country that divide us, we all know that there are things that bring us together, like Penn State. And you were named a friend of Penn State, which is the highest legislative award that we can give away at the university. You're the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Award. What do those honors from your alma mater mean to you?
Well, it's obviously very flattering and humbling that the people of the university felt that I was worthy of those recognitions. It's Penn State. It was an important part of my life, still is, and you think about the, you think about the alma mater, the words in the alma mater that we all sing at football games, and I guess the bottom line is, it's just it's wonderful to be recognized by a university that helped shape me and my life. So it's very, very kind and flattering, and believe me, there are a lot of people out there who are who are alumni who are every bit as worthy of these recognitions as I am.
So we like to have a little bit of fun here on Coffee Hour and what we call our lightning round. So I'm going to throw a couple quick questions at you, and you just tell us what comes to mind. So your favorite Penn State memory?
Favorite Penn State memory? Oh, I guess the Phi-Sci 500. That was maybe that's probably, it's an easy question.
Your favorite class at Penn State?
There are a few. I'll tell you. I had some good history classes with Professor Jackson Spielvogel. I had a very good geography class with a professor named Pierce Lewis. Those are two of my favorite, more memorable classes. A great history class with Arthur Goldschmidt on the Middle East. So those are three classes that I would vividly say those are ones I really stuck out in my mind. Spielvogel on Western civilization, Pierce Lewis on political geography, which is great, and then the third one, Arthur Goldschmidt on the Middle East.
You won't be surprised by this, but you're not the first person to mention Dr. Spielvogel. He is a popular professor here at Penn State, and alumni rave about his courses. So your favorite?
He made history interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Your favorite spot on campus?
I guess I always liked, what do we call the walk? When you come up Allen Street, from the corner room Allen Street, you walk up towards Willard Building, and then you got Old Main on the right. That walk up there, right towards the Petit Library, right up there. You go right by the Schwab. I always look at the Schwab Auditorium, and then the Carnegie Auditorium, or the building caddy corner from it. That's kind of like one of my favorite places on campus. The tree-lined sidewalk rather, and you have that. I don't know what they call that obelisk. What they call it with all the geology of Pennsylvania.
The rocks across the state of Pennsylvania.
Whatever they call that. Yeah, that and I just always liked that part of the campus. Just walking straight up from Allen Street, straight up that walkway, and it's just I had a lot of classes in that area too. So it was I would say probably my favorite part of the campus.
That's great. Yeah, you walk by Old Willow there too, the great willow tree that's there near Old Main. How about if you could have dinner with anybody, who would it be and why?
Oh boy, living or dead? Are we talking?
It doesn't matter.
Probably Winston Churchill or Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. Your most unusual we are moment, and what I mean by this is, we hear about people traveling all over the country and or all over the world, and out of nowhere they get a we are, and it kind of surprises them because it's out of context. What is your we are moment?
Oh, I've had so many of those. I mean, there's too many. I've had them in Afghanistan, Iraq. I've had them in Europe. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've gotten that, going to an embassy somewhere, and I think it was in Ukraine, and there we are. So I've had those incidents virtually everywhere. So I mean, that's too easy.
If you have a question for Congressman Dent, you can ask that in the Q&A tab at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Your favorite Penn State sport?
Well, of course, football for me. I mean, I love Penn State football, and I love going to the games. It's just, it's kind of like, and that was the case for me for years. I mean, it just, don't disturb me during a Penn State football game. I'm completely consumed. So I get a little too emotional at times during the games. I frighten my wife and children at times. With some of the outbursts, and so they tend to stay away from me at that time. But Penn State football, I've enjoyed some of the wrestling too. It's fantastic. I
I
haven't been to a
figured
hockey game.
wrestling would come up with both of your alma maters, Penn State and Lehigh being powerhouses in wrestling. I figured wrestling
Well,
might be mentioned on our call today.
yeah. Well, I'm from an area too where we produced a lot of really good football players and wrestlers. And I'm not very good at either. So, so that's one thing that we're very proud of here in the Lehigh Valley: football and wrestling.
I remember it was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and you looked at the list of NCAA champions, and half of them were from the Lehigh Valley, spread across 4 or 5 different schools. I know Oklahoma State had a couple guys from the Lehigh Valley. You look at all the top 10 wrestling teams in the country, and it's kids from Easton and Bethlehem and Northampton and
Yeah.
Phillipsburg and all throughout the valley.
Funny you mentioned that. A very distant relative of mine named Jeff Baum graduated from Oklahoma State, I think in
All right.
1970, and he won the NCAAs. He was from Allentown. He won, at Oklahoma State. I don't know how he got away from Penn State, but he's a dentist now. So,
How about your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
it's not peachy paterno, although I like that.
Okay.
I like the peanut butter swirl.
Excellent. A couple questions coming in here. First one, assuming either it's basically they're asking, regardless of who wins the election, what do you think the future of the Republican Party is?
Well, that depends on how this election goes. If the president loses, and particularly if he loses decisively, I suspect there will be a reckoning about what the party should look like. I have my own view on that, which I've articulated many times on CNN, which includes, I think the party has to become more socially tolerant, more constructively engaged on the international stage. And I would argue, has to continue to embrace free markets with, reasonable regulation. I'm not talking about going back to 1850 or 1925. I'm talking about, a modern society. And so I think if there were 3 things, I would probably focus on those. I mean, to attract, younger voters and people of color and LGBT voters, I think the party has to show itself as more socially tolerant and sensible than it has in recent years. I think under Trump, we've kind of gotten to this, if there is a governing philosophy behind Donald Trump, we call it Trumpism, but I would define that as maybe 3 or 4 isms, isolationism, protectionism, nativism, touch and nihilism, unilateralism. And I don't think that is where the party should be going forward. So even if Trump loses, there will be some who say, well, yeah, well, Donald's kind of crazy. He's kind of nutty, but what he's pushing though is really good. And I would argue that it's really not that good in many respects. And then I think we need to, have a party that's focused on certain principles, ideals, or philosophies rather than on a personality. I mean, because this year at the party convention, the party didn't have a platform other than that we support the agenda of the President of the United States. And I said, well, that's not really how you should have a party platform. Not that people really pay close attention to party platforms. I know as elected officials, a lot of us never paid that close attention to them. Oh, your platform says X. I said, well, yeah, but I'm voting Y. It doesn't matter. I mean, the platforms really don't matter, but I guess it's at least good to have one that at least lays down some thoughts and ideas about, what your governing philosophy would be.
It seems like, and I think you could level some of those same criticisms against the Democratic Party, right? And not necessarily those same criticisms, but that they are moving to the extremes. Do you think at some point we might see a legitimate third party form?
Possibly, but just to say something about the Democrats, they're under tremendous pressure too. They are being pulled hard left. I mean, the energy and the anger in their party is really more towards that, I'll say that squad wing, the Sanders-Warren wing, which is, in my view, is very frightening. It's very frightening that these kinds of, they're talking about Green New Deals and Medicare for all and things that frankly just aren't going to fly under any circumstances. But this is what, they're pushing as policy. I'm not saying Joe Biden is, but I'm saying members of the left wing of his party are. And I do see a lot of these Democratic congressmen and women are under tremendous pressure to move in that direction just to survive primary fights. And so I think Democrats are in a really bad place as well. And a lot of those types of proposals they're advancing are simply reckless. So the center of the country, I'll say somewhere between center right to center left, feels terribly underrepresented right now politically. And I don't know there's ever going to be a third party or a third party movement. We've had them from time to time. The question is which of the two major political parties is going to be able to speak to that population in a better way than we have. My own view is that the way we nominate candidates for office is the problem. The primary process is what's broken, and we have to figure that out. Really, there's no, the Constitution really doesn't provide for primaries. This is kind of an invention that came as this system, as our system advanced and developed. Right. But the primary process, I really think, is what's causing much of the problems that we're facing. Hell, look in Georgia, they just nominated some woman, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's a QAnon candidate. QAnon candidate. What's QAnon? It's this conspiracy theorist organization. They believe 9/11, really didn't happen. And there are other wacky theories that they believe in about pedophiles who were part of the deep state. This is really bizarre, weird stuff. And the woman just got nominated. She's going to become a member of Congress. And, back there was a time that, people like this would have been drummed out of the party. And now they're on the stage. It's pretty frightening.
Right here in Pennsylvania, how do you think Pennsylvania will swing in this election nationally?
Well, I didn't get it right in 2016. I thought that, I was actually looking at the polls, and I saw that, that Hillary Clinton was winning, Philadelphia and the immediate collar counties by a large enough margin to win the state. And she did win that area by a large enough margin to win the state. Her problem was she collapsed upstate. And so I that's what surprised me, I guess. So today, I think that the president, though, I think is in a more precarious position now than he was in 2016. He won Pennsylvania by 44,000 votes, and he did exceedingly well. Again, outside of the Philadelphia region, and particularly in the northern and western parts of the state, he did extremely well. And I think in many respects, he's going to have to pull another inside straight, but it will be more difficult for him to do it in this election cycle because the position of Republicans in the suburban areas of the state and country, for that matter, have eroded considerably since his election in 2016. Just look at 2017, 18, and 19. It's not just the Philadelphia suburbs. It's the suburbs in the Lehigh Valley. It's the suburbs of Harrisburg, suburbs of Pittsburgh. Republican candidates are losing badly there. So the question then becomes, can Donald Trump and Republican candidates offset their losses, statewide candidates? Can they offset the losses they're experiencing, not only in the urban areas, but in these suburban communities? Can they offset those losses with rural voters? And my brain tells me mathematically there aren't enough rural voters to offset the losses in the suburbs. So that's what my brain tells me. And I still think that's the case. So I just don't see a path forward. And of course, Joe Biden is not Hillary Clinton. Joe Biden is not going to win those areas where Donald Trump did extremely well last time. But can he cut those margins back a few points? And I think the answer is he probably can, and he'll probably do better than Hillary Clinton did in the suburbs, and probably at least as well among the African American community. I think Biden's got some weakness with the Hispanic community, particularly Hispanic men, and particularly Cuban men, and some other. And Venezuelan men. It's more of a Florida problem, I think, than a national problem at this point. So that's kind of my 2-cent analysis. I don't know how, I just don't see the president's path forward. But, I was wrong in 2016. Maybe he pulls another inside straight. Maybe Biden collapses. Maybe I'm underestimating the president's strengths in those rural areas or overestimating Biden's strengths, in the suburban communities. But I'm looking at data, I'm looking at polling, and I'm going to discount. If I see a poll that says Biden's up 6 points in Pennsylvania, I'm going to say he's up 4. Okay, I'm going to say he's up 4, and just assuming that maybe Trump voters are less likely to want to speak to pollsters, or there might be some flaws in the methodology. But again, who knows? And I'm not as confident in the science of polling today as I was years ago. Although, to be fair, in 2016, the national polls were pretty accurate. They had Hillary Clinton winning by about 2 points, and that's what she won by. Even some of the state polls were a little bit off, in that, particularly in the swing states. But even many of those polls were tightening toward the end of the campaign, so they weren't as inaccurate as I think we're been led to believe.
You mentioned earlier about other countries watching last night. You mentioned being isolationist. Given the changes in some of the transatlantic relationships, particularly with Germany, would you comment on what you think we should be doing to facilitate progress on the international front?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Germany and the transatlantic relationship. I was chair of the Congressional Study Group on Germany, so I was kind of like one of the key leaders on that subject. And I guess who would have ever thought, here we are, more than 75 years after the end of the Second World War, that Germany under Angela Merkel is now seen as the leading voice in defense of democratic values and institutions, across the world. I mean, the voice. They seem to be that's the country that is, actually, they often consider themselves, like children, like a child to us. We were the parent, basically, helping them develop and grow since the war and developing a system that they can be proud of. And, now they feel like a child where the parent no longer loves them. And now in some respects, I feel like the child is now trying to re-educate. The child is trying to take care of the parent, trying to rehabilitate the parent. And so
I can relate to that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, you know how that is, your parents raise you at some point, I know your dad's in the call, so he should probably listen right now, but you reach the point at times where you sometimes have to parent your parents, as they get older. They need help and they struggle a little bit and they're not as sharp or quick as they used to be, and they need assistance and they get a little quirky. I mean, you know how that is. I mean, you have to, just the way things, it's just life, and I feel like that, I've always felt that the transatlantic relationship, the relationship between the U.S. and Europe, is the foundation of American national security policy. I would also argue it has been the crowning diplomatic achievement of the United States of America in the post-war era. I mean, to take a Europe that was before this, the norm in Europe had been, centuries of discord and fighting and wars. And we've had 75 years of peace, prosperity, and stability. And it would not have happened but for American engagement and leadership. Now, obviously, the Europeans had a lot to do with this. I mean, NATO, the European Union, I could all add, and other institutions have helped make this a much better place. And I would always say to people that, this is a crowning achievement. And to walk away from NATO, in my view, would be disqualifying. Whatever its faults, it may need to be reformed or repurposed. We all understand that. And, and certainly, it's a marriage, though. I always say it's a marriage. It's a good marriage. There are problems in the marriage. Nobody should be talking about divorce right now. We don't want to do that. And I think that's something that has concerned me deeply, that these democratic values, small d democratic values, have taken root throughout most of Europe. There's some backsliding, obviously, in Hungary and Poland. But, we should be proud of what we've accomplished together. And, I think, pulling troops out of Germany like they're talking right now, I mean, I think is very, very short-sighted. Frankly, I used to do military construction projects. It's less expensive for us to base troops overseas in many cases, in places like Korea and Japan, especially in those two countries, and even Germany, than at home. But we don't have troops in Germany to protect America. They're there to help us project power in the Middle East and North Africa. It's important for logistical purposes more than anything else, to help us project power elsewhere. So, I mean, to pull out, I mean, it just doesn't seem to be in our national interest. And, where are you going to move them? Okay, you want to move some to Poland, or you going to move them to Italy, to the United Kingdom? It makes no sense in my view. So, but I am very, very concerned that with the, this rules-based international order that has been developed since the Second World War, was American-led. Again, it's an imperfect order, but I would argue it's been very successful. There's not been any great power conflict since the Second World War. Have there been wars? Absolutely. But there hasn't been great power conflict like we saw, prior to this, prior to that. And that's not a small thing. And our country has became enormously prosperous during this period of time. And I would argue that America's trading relationships and its system of alliances and trading arrangements are very much responsible for not only our security, but our economic well-being. And I think, we've kind of taken this all for granted, but to blow this whole thing up without a replacement, I mean, the world is not a self-ordering place, right? I mean, it's, if there's, we'll be, obviously we're already kind of in a multipolar world now, certainly with the emergence of China. But if we don't lead, if we create a vacuum, that vacuum will be filled by others who do not share our interests or our values. And so we better think real hard about this before we walk away from it all. And, just kind of flip the middle finger at the rest of the world and say, you know what, we're on our own now. It's all about us, and screw the rest of them. Well, frankly, a lot of these other people around the world want us engaged. They want us engaged because they know what the alternative is, and they don't like that. They actually like America in many respects, despite what you might hear from time to time. A lot of people do like us. They like our values. That's why they come to our country in big numbers. Uh-oh, are we frozen? Paul? Uh-oh. Paul, can you hear me? Paul? I'm gonna disconnect and come back in, I think. I guess they hear me, but I can't hear anybody. I'm gonna leave and rejoin. Let's do this. I'm back in. No, I'm still in. Hey, I'm back in. Can you hear me, Paul? Paul? Paul,
Hey,
I'm back in.
I'm not exactly sure what happened there.
I'm back in. Yeah.
Okay, I am too. I'm not sure if anyone else is here with us. It looks like there might be, but well, Charlie, I wanted to thank you for joining us here on Coffee Hour. And you mentioned the alma mater earlier in our talk, and certainly your service to Penn State and to our country and to of your alma mater, and for that we're truly grateful for joining us on Coffee Talk.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody at Penn State. We are.
Penn State. And I want to thank everyone else for joining us. Sorry about the technical difficulty we're having here at the end. But I want to invite everybody to join us tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, as we have another edition of Football Live. We hope to see you all tuning in for that, and on future events with the Penn State Alumni Association. You can find more information about our virtual events at alumni.psu.edu. Thanks for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.